All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're talking about a high-stakes tactical operation. And look, we aren't just talking about your standard run-of-the-mill trap, neuter, return scenario here. Nope, we are focusing entirely on capturing that one elusive, unneutered neighborhood tomcat. You know exactly the one I'm talking about, right? The cat that basically seems to have a ninja-like sixth sense for wire mesh and trigger plates. Mastering these advanced trapping tactics is absolutely essential if we actually want to stabilize community cat colonies, because leaving a dominant breeding male intact, well, that just leaves the door wide open for population explosions and neighborhood conflict. So, the big question, how do you actually outsmart the neighborhood's most elusive boss cat? Honestly, I want you to look at this not just as trapping, but as a strategic heist. Seriously, it's a battle of wits against a target who has actively learned how to avoid capture over time. When you're dealing with a cat like this, brute force or just blind luck simply will not work. We literally have to outplan him.
What we are up against here is what we call a trap-savvy tomcat. By definition, this is a dominant male community cat who has become highly suspicious of standard traps due to repeated failed, or even just partial, trapping attempts in the past. The research actually shows that every single time a trap fails, whether the metal door just barely grazes his tail or he somehow manages to steal the bait without triggering the plate at all, this cat gets smarter. His suspicion of enclosed spaces goes absolutely through the roof. So to catch him, we have to completely deprogram that suspicion.
And that brings us right to Phase 1, intelligence gathering.
Look, we cannot rely on guesswork here. Meticulous preparation is exactly how we win this game. First off, you need to identify his exact daily feeding times. Felines absolutely thrive on routine, and community cats will adapt perfectly to a strict feeding schedule. The food has to be left out for a window of exactly 30 to 60 minutes, and then boom, it's removed. Period. While you're doing this, start mapping his specific travel routes. Does he always stick to the fence line? Does he wait under a specific oak tree? Observe his latency to food, meaning how long does he lurk in the shadows before he actually feels safe enough to step up to the bowl? And this next part is critical. You must coordinate with all the neighborhood feeders. I mean, if someone 3 houses down is just leaving a giant bowl of dry kibble out 24/7, your whole operation is basically doomed. You absolutely have to control the food source.
Okay, so once you have that intelligence dialed in, we move on to Phase 2, the art of pre-baiting. This is without a doubt our ultimate psychological tool to lower the target's defenses using unset traps. Let's walk through this tactical escalation. For a minimum of a week, you're going to zip tie the trapdoors completely open. On day 1, you literally just place the food at the very front entrance of the wire trap. Don't make him go inside at all. By day 3, you move that food halfway inside the tunnel. And by day 5, the food goes at the absolute back, entirely behind the trip plate. What we are doing here is systematically desensitizing the cat to the physical structure of that wire mesh. By the end of the week, that trap is no longer a threat. It's just become a safe, totally normal, predictable extension of his daily feeding station.
But the crucial point here is what you actually put inside that trap. You need high-value, intensely aromatic foods. Canned mackerel or sardines in oil are incredible for this, because the heavy oil content ensures that the scent doesn't just dry out quickly in the wind. Now, for cats that have maybe grown a bit wary of fish, low-sodium canned white meat chicken is your absolute secret weapon. Oh, and here is a golden rule you have to remember. Never, ever use standard dry kibble on trapping day. It just doesn't emit a strong enough scent trail. And remember, the primary bait must always go at the absolute back of the trap, so he has to commit his whole body to reach it.
Now, when standard baiting just isn't enough to trick him, we enter Phase 3, tactical escalation. Instead of what I like to call theatrical baiting, where a massive buffet of food is piled right near the door, which inevitably results in a stolen meal and a highly educated trap-shy cat, you need strategic escalation. This means using a tiny, literally fingernail-sized scent trail leading to the back. If he's tiptoeing over the trigger, you can actually hide the trigger plate. Or you can use a manual string-sprung box trap. That's where you prop the door open with a stick and literally pull a string to shut it yourself, but only when you visually confirm his entire body is clear of the door.
Camouflage is also super key here. A shiny metal cage sitting right in the middle of a green lawn? Yeah, that screams danger to a wildcat. You've got to blend the trap into the landscape. Place it along his natural travel pathways, like running parallel to a brick wall, and use cardboard, burlap, or surrounding brush to break up that visual cage effect, making it look like a natural tunnel. Just make sure, of course, that your cover doesn't interfere with the trigger mechanism or the closing door.
So, depending on the cat's behavior, our arsenal builds. We always start with the standard box trap. But if he enters and somehow avoids the plate, we escalate to the manual door box trap. If you notice he cautiously circles the back of the trap trying to pull food through the wire, well then you use side-by-side traps. You place two traps right next to each other, which basically uses his own exploratory circling against him. But what if he flat-out refuses to enter a narrow enclosure altogether? Well then we escalate to the big one, the drop trap.
The drop trap is really the ultimate tool for this. See, cats are generally much less fearful of going under something than they are of walking into a narrow tunnel. This trap is propped up manually, and it's triggered by the trapper with a pull string from a safe distance. It gives you absolute selective control. You just wait until the exact right cat is totally under the frame eating, and then, ding, you pull the pin. However, I do want to point out that the sources explicitly note this is an advanced tool. It actually requires a specialized transfer cage, and ideally an experienced two-person team to safely move the cat from under the drop trap into a holding cage without him escaping.
Okay, with all our gear in play, we have to pivot to Phase 4, safety protocols, and these are non-negotiable.
Everything we do here is totally centered on animal welfare. Because of this, there is an absolute ironclad rule derived directly from the expert reference manuals. Never use darts, nets, or tranquilizer guns for routine community cat trapping. Just don't do it. They are incredibly dangerous, they cause massive amounts of unnecessary stress, and they can easily result in severe injury or catching the wrong animal. We rely on patience, psychology, and approved humane live traps. There are literally zero exceptions to this rule.
All right, the prep is done. We finally arrived at Phase 5, execution and the aftermath. The timeline here on trapping day is tense, and it requires absolute precision. At T-24 hours, a complete food fast begins. Water stays out, for sure, but absolutely no food. Hunger is the primary engine that's going to override this tomcat's natural caution. At the trapping hour, you deploy the trap on perfectly flat ground. If a trap wobbles even a quarter of an inch when he steps on it, he's gone. He will bolt. Then, the catch happens. The absolute moment that trap springs shut, you execute what's called the immediate cover rule. You must instantly cover the trap with a dark, opaque towel. Why is that? Well, because a wild cat enclosed in a cage will immediately experience blind panic, and they can severely injure their face or break teeth thrashing against the wire. Covering it immediately breaks their visual line of sight, and it instantly shifts their central nervous system right out of that panic response. Finally, after the veterinary neuter surgery, there has to be a 24 to 48-hour recovery period, in a quiet, climate-controlled holding space before he's safely returned to his territory.
So we've walked through the intelligence gathering, the fascinating psychology of pre-baiting, the tactical gear, and those critical, non-negotiable safety rules required to catch a truly trap-savvy tom. It absolutely takes work, but it is the only scientifically validated way to humanely reduce overpopulation and conflict, which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. By combining human ingenuity with a deep respect for animal welfare, how many more community cats can we outsmart, protect, and ultimately stabilize? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope you take these tactics out into the field.